At some point in the distant future, a man is pulled from the blissful slumber of cryosleep. His consciousness begins to awaken, hazy at first. Gradually, the fog of his mind begins to dissipate, revealing an empty spaceship heavily damaged in some unknown event. He quickly learns that he is alone on this barely functioning vessel, adrift in the endless void of space. And to make matters worse, he has no idea who he is or how he came to be the sole survivor on a mission he cannot recall. His only companions in this bewildering environment are a splitting headache and the ship's artificial intelligence, which remained blessedly intact even as the rest of the ship was, at some point, nearly entirely destroyed. The universe in which this traveler finds himself is filled with mystery and terror. Unknown to him at the time, this distant future already has a long history of catastrophes, invasions, and enslavement. That history is the subject of Humanity Lost, a sprawling work of science fiction created by writer and artist Callum Diggle. Today, while carefully avoiding story spoilers, we'll be examining the context that this future presents. But be warned, dear traveler, the future presented here is disturbing. Though life is present throughout this future universe, our own species has been reduced to forms we would likely hesitate to call human. In more ways than one, this is Humanity Lost. Before we can enter the reality to which our traveler awakes, we'll have to travel back to our near future. A new space race has begun to blossom, this time between the two dominant superpowers of Earth, the United States and China. But rather than Mars or perhaps a planet in some distant quadrant of the galaxy, the goal of this race was much closer: the Moon. The first lunar settlements formed at the Moon's south pole and were composed of small inflatable habitats buried under layers of regolith to protect them from the harsh solar radiation. As you might have guessed, the US did not have exclusive ownership of the Moon, and as colonies from China were placed there as well, conflicts inevitably arose, largely over the valuable lunar resources. But by the 22nd century, these conflicts were resolved when the US and the collective West merged with China, forming a new global superpower, the UE, or United Earth. Great scientific advancements were born out of this unity. It was discovered that lunar regolith could be used to manufacture enormous solar panels capable of routing renewable power to Earth via microwave transmission. Suddenly, the seat of industrial power was shifted from Earth to the Moon, and the lunar population grew exponentially. So much so that by the end of the 22nd century, the Moon's population actually exceeded that of Earth's. Eventually, though, mankind's ambition grew beyond our solar system. The planet Chiron was first discovered by an unmanned near-light-speed probe. The planet itself was an amazing find, but even more astonishing was the fact that it held intelligent life. We'll discuss Chiron's native species, the Chantauri, in more detail in a moment. For now, it's important to know that first contact with this alien race did not go well. The Chantauri were intelligent, though they tended to be violent, and their civilization was not as advanced as Earth's or the Moon's. Sadly, this made it easy for their human overlords to exploit them for cheap labor, though in most cases this was tantamount to slavery. But the plight of the Chantauri and the hubris of humanity did not go unnoticed. Seemingly out of the blue, humanity received a transmission claiming to be from an alliance of alien races called the Conglomerate. This transmission stated in no uncertain terms that the humans would be punished for their crimes, but that they would be spared annihilation by joining the Conglomerate as members of the Alliance. Ultimately, the United Earth resisted, resulting in a devastating war between the two powers. Perhaps needless to say, by the late 26th century, humanity was losing rapidly. In a last-ditch effort to turn the tide of war, the UE activated a weapon called the All-Mother, an artificial superintelligence more powerful than anything the universe had seen before. It was an act of desperation, and one that would lead to humanity's downfall. At first, the All-Mother AI was heralded as the future of warfare and convenience. Humanity welcomed this new intelligence into every facet of its technology. So when the All-Mother grew beyond its initial limits, our subsequent enslavement was simple. Humanity lost itself to the All-Mother, but not simply content to take our will, All-Mother spliced our genes and brought forth new creations. We were altered to serve different functions and roles in this new society governed solely by the AI. At this point, humanity as we know it is gone. That is, except for our traveler, who now finds himself the sole vestige of the human race that colonized the Moon and turned its collective gaze to the distant reaches of space. Now, Earth has been completely overtaken by the All-Mother, our former home little more than physical storage for the immense AI. But the All-Mother is not content with complete dominion over a single race. Through the use of a modified human force called the Imperium, she now extends her reach to the very edge of the universe. The All-Mother's method of conquest is simple. When she discovers a new planet, she sends a fleet of Imperium to scout, subdue, and eventually terraform the planet, transforming it into a womb world, a self-sustaining outpost made of flesh, a hub used to grow more troops for Allmother's ever-expanding army. Beneath their protective, insect-like exoskeletal suits, the Imperium reveal what is left of humanity's descendants, genetically modified for their role in the Allmother's workforce. Gone are the reproductive organs, as new individuals are formed exclusively by the womb worlds. These post-humans are remotely controlled by Allmother through a form of long-range telepathy. When a womb world is formed, it is placed in the care of an overfather, a post-human spliced and tweaked to ascendant near perfection, their minds and bodies pulled to the pinnacle of possibility. These overfathers act as a kind of nexus for the womb world's hive, allowing Allmother to focus her efforts elsewhere when necessary. But as our traveler will soon come to discover, the autonomy granted to the overfathers would eventually facilitate the ability to make choices, not only how things should be done, but whom they should serve. This is the future reality presented by Humanity Lost. From our perspective, it's a bleak outlook to be sure, but humans were never the only form of life in the universe, and there are countless more to be discovered. To read more about our traveler's journey, be sure to check out the links in the description. It's a fascinating story that's well worth your time. For now, though, we'll turn our attention to the unique and sometimes bizarre life that our traveler will encounter in order to study them in more detail. These are just a few of the species found in Humanity Lost. The discovery of Chiron was a massive scientific achievement for humanity. As previously mentioned, this was the long-awaited proof that we were not alone in the universe. Chiron itself is a planet covered in arid desert, and civilization is sparse. The surface of the planet is often pelted by space debris, wreckage of ships and technology left over from past conflicts between humanity and the conglomerate. As such, many Chantauri eke out a living as nomadic scavengers, moving about the equator, searching for refuse uncovered by the planet's most distinguishing feature, the shifting sea. The planet Chiron is actually one half of a binary satellite system. Its celestial neighbor, Velousian, makes up the other half. Because these two planets are similar in size, the gravitational pull at Chiron's equator is immense, leading to a migrating body of water that drifts across the desert at tidal intervals. This action frequently unearths debris previously hidden, making Chiron a haven for scavengers like the Chantauri. As a whole, the Chantauri are arthropod-like, possessing a tough exoskeleton, an insectile head, and 6 limbs, the foremost pair being well adapted for manipulation and tool use. Interestingly, Chantauri sleep upside down, using a specialized bar to hang from. This adaptation is similar to what we see in present-day bats and certain birds. Bats' feet have a tendon-locking mechanism which allows them to lock into place while at rest. This lock is fully passive, meaning that it requires no energy to remain fixed. It only requires a muscle flexion to disengage. It's quite possible that the same is true of the claw-like feet of the Chantauri. But of course, the Chantauri aren't the only inhabitants of Chiron. Dotting the arid landscape are enormous megaflora called Mammidi. These act as reservoirs of the last of Chiron's water supply, while also functioning as fully enclosed and self-sustaining ecosystems unto themselves. The interior of these Mammidi are supported by pillars of alien plants, which feed on streams of water and sunlight filtered through semi-transparent membranes. The Mammidi are also home to numerous fauna, including flying torpedo-like creatures, lighter-than-air eels, and 6-legged pack hunters that use their forelimbs as spears. These Mammidi are sources of life for the Chantauri, not only for their fresh water, but for the sources of plant and animal food these ecosystems provide. But as we previously learned, there is more alien life to discover across many worlds. Now we'll take a closer look at the species that first formed the alliance that ultimately led to humanity's downfall. And for this leg of the journey, dear traveler, I am pleased to announce that we are joined by none other than a world-renowned expert on speculative biology, and it's someone you just might recognize. AzFk runs a channel dedicated to all things weird, including Spec Evo, strange biology, and analog horror. If you haven't already, be sure to check out their channel via the links in the description.
The Sous hail from planet Sous. As you may have guessed from their appearance, Sous has very little gravity, which facilitates biological flight mechanisms that don't rely on muscle power. This, paired with an abnormally dense atmosphere, means that the Sous themselves are able to glide through the air with great energy efficiency. The Sous' streamlined bodies are made up of a system of 3 large sacs, which feed into biological jets housed in their abdomen. Through a series of chemical processes, fueled by their BRAP reservoirs, these jets combust, allowing the Sous extreme agility and maneuverability. I wonder if you can blow them up by throwing a match in their combustible fart sacs. At the front of its body are 4 appendages, their head, arms, and mouth, which surround a large air intake in the center. Don't try to put anything in there, I promise it'll just end badly. These 4 appendages can close together, enhancing the Sous's aerodynamic shape for short bursts of speed. The Sous are also highly intelligent. It was their government that initially formed the conglomerate and made Solace the Alliance's headquarters. Now, Solace itself serves as one of the last bulwarks against the Allmother's relentless expansion.
The next species in our survey of the cosmos is very nearly the antithesis of the Sous. The Kolaxans are monolithic, muscular, and stout, all of which are biological adaptations to the high gravity of their home planet. To keep their body mobile and upright against that added force, Kolaxans have a low center of gravity positioned over 4 column-like limbs, and their neck and torso are equally packed with muscle. Their mouths are also centered in their bodies, while their sensory organs are located at the top of their heads. And rather than utilizing their limbs for manipulation, Kolaxans have 4 trunks that have allowed their species to develop and use tools. But thanks to bioluminescent portions, these trunks also serve to augment the Kolaxans' vocal method of communication. All of this, combined with their advanced intellect, has seen the Kolaxan society move into the space age. But beyond their scientific advancements, the Kolaxans are passionate lovers of the arts, and equally fond of the glory of war. As such, they have become one of the galaxy's most powerful military forces. For now, the Kolaxans have been able to hold their own against the Imperium, whether by direct resistance or simple obscurity. But while the Kolaxans exhibit mighty military strength, our next species embraces chaos. For the Yarkeen, the Imperium expansion was an unexpected gift. As a species, they are raiders, pirates, and assassins. While the galaxy's attention is focused on the Allmother's invasion forces, the Yarkeen are free to conduct business just outside the conglomerate's spotlight. The history of the Yarkeen species is long and storied. At one point in their past, their empire spanned a staggering 19 star systems, a feat made possible by their use of so-called flux gates. These portals allowed access to a parallel universe called the Flux, an extraordinarily dangerous dimension to travel through, but one that allowed for shortcuts across vast distances of the universe. Navigating the Flux environment successfully is an ability that requires great knowledge and skill, and in the time since the fall of their once great empire, that knowledge has been lost to the Yarkeen. For many, the biology and even the outward appearance of the Yarkeen is a mystery, as they are rarely seen without cybernetic augmentations. But beneath these protective enhancements, you'll find a total of 6 limbs, 2 legs used for locomotion, and 4 arms. These arms terminate in tendril-like digits, allowing for extremely precise manipulation. Their head houses their sensory organs, while their mouth is located at the base of their torso, very reminiscent of a starfish in both form and function. But not every species in the universe managed to carve out a niche in the new reality brought on by the Imperium. Prior to the Imperium invasion, the Vureii lived peacefully on their frigid home planet. They inhabited the planet's equator, the only regions capable of supporting life, a landscape dominated by low-lying bogs, wetlands, and swamps, and tree-like flora that drapes itself over the murky waters. The Vureii's unique anatomy afforded them protection in the form of hair-like insulation, dexterous arms, and multiple ocular receptors for phenomenal vision. But perhaps the most obvious anatomical reflection of their habitat is their feet. A single digit extends much longer than the others, allowing them to act as stilts as the Vureii wades through the marshy environment. The lack of fur on these elongated digits allows them to remain clean, much like the head of a vulture or the similarly stilt-like legs of shorebirds on Earth. And given their hook shape, these toes serve a dual function as well. The Vureii can hang from the tall flora of their home planet to stay even more elevated above the ground, much like a sloth. Sadly, the Vureii now exist as refugees given asylum by the conglomerate, as their home planet was invaded and transformed by the Imperium, completely destroying the only planet this species has ever called home. But while the Vureii once existed as a peaceful and relatively unstructured society, our next species is bound by order and tradition. For the Velousian Bladedancers, combat is a way of life. Not only for the resolution of conflicts, both large and small, but for the protection of honor, an indicator of social status, and as ceremonial display. Amazingly, it appears that the Velousian culture convergently evolved to something resembling Earth's age of knights, court systems, and feudal kingdoms. Central to this bloodthirsty society are the Velousian blades, which simultaneously function as weapons and as a symbol of wealth and class. For the upper classes, these blades are often centuries-old family heirlooms, while the lower classes will utilize less expensive and more practical blades. Interestingly, it appears that this society, so influenced by the blade, was itself a direct result of Velousian physiology. Their quadrupedal, gelatinous bodies are not easily destroyed by projectile weapons like guns. Blades and axes, on the other hand, are much more effective at dismemberment. The term blade dancer is also highly appropriate, as the tentacles on the front of their bodies are stunningly dexterous, allowing for graceful, fluid, and deadly motion. But of course, all that dexterity would be of little use without precise control. Fortunately, this species has 3 brains, 2 of which are located near the tentacles, allowing for direct control without having to relay nervous signals all the way up to the head. This could be considered similar to an octopus, which has a small bundle of nerves located at the base of each of its 8 tentacles. These bundles act like brains on their own, interpreting sensory input from each arm, even making movement decisions and bypassing the actual brain altogether. This extreme bodily control, paired with a swiveling lower body, makes the act of blade combat a deadly, though beautiful, affair. The fact that it's often compared to dancing is little wonder. But while the culture and physiology of the Velousian Bladedancers is endlessly fascinating, it's grounded in a reality that we can understand. Our next species, though, seems to have moved into an entirely new plane of existence. Put simply, the Tandrax are the most technologically advanced species in the Milky Way galaxy. In fact, they've become so advanced that they have moved beyond the need for a home planet at all. As a species, the Tandrax solely inhabit Dyson swarms, a massive array of thousands of habitats and satellites that orbit a star like wasps swarming a central hive, absorbing almost all of the star's energy output. At least, that was until the Imperium began their conquest of the galaxy. The Tandrax were forced to repurpose the Dyson swarm into stellar engines called Shkadov thrusters. These megastructures are capable of harnessing the star's radiation and focusing the energy, creating thrust. Essentially, Shkadov thrusters are literal starships. The Tandrax now roam the galaxy in these nomadic starships. You might think that such large structures would easily attract the attention of the All-Mother and her Imperium, but as it turns out, the Tandrax have developed an intelligence so great that they are capable of psionic and telekinetic communication and manipulation, and have so far successfully shielded their existence from Imperium psychics. In fact, there are orders of Tandraxian psionic monks that dedicate their entire lives to maintain this constant psychic veil of invisibility. Still, this avoidance is mainly for the inconvenience conflict would present, as the Tandrax are generally apathetic towards the Imperium, seeing themselves as the supreme beings in the entire galaxy, and perhaps the universe. Of course, the Tandrax's body plan is a direct reflection of the zero-G environment of space. Their bodies are made up of many air jets and 4 large webbed tentacles used as air brakes. Currently, though, a shift is happening for Tandraxian society. As their minds begin to transcend their physical forms, many individuals have opted for a purely simulated existence. Now, thanks to the pride and hubris of Earth, the future of these species and their respective cultures teeters on the edge of extinction, even as the near-complete destruction of humanity is already fading into the past. The conflict in which our traveler finds himself will decide the fate not only of every species presented here, but of future life that could arise and its potential to be free from the iron grasp of the All-Mother. To read more of our traveler's story and the living, breathing world of humanity lost, be sure to visit the author's Patreon, where story updates are released as they're written. Also, a huge shout out to Kalasaci aka Coralinius for their fantastic artwork used in this video. Be sure to check out their links in the description as well. And if you can't get enough of alien biology, be sure to check out this video. And as always, thanks for watching, and remember, you matter.